From beyond the farthest reaches of our galaxy they come. Two brains pulsing with a strange energy. These space brains come to share their love of science fiction movies.
Hi, and welcome to Space Brains, the show where we joy watch sci-fi movies and then talk about what was good and what was great. I'm Surrey, and this is Mark.
Hiya. Tonight we're talking about the movie Otherlife, 2017, directed by Ben C. Lucas, and consider this your spoiler warning.
Yeah, turn back now if you haven't seen this movie, and then you can tune back in after you have.
So, sorry, what was your number one takeaway from the movie Otherlife?
I think the number one takeaway I had was that you don't have to have Inception, dreams within dreams, in order to have an effective dream alternate reality existence. That was quite good. The other thing I took away is that there's a whole nother science of neuroprosthesis, which
Definitely.
I've looked into now, and it is exciting and further advanced than I thought.
Yeah, that whole idea of mixing, in this movie they mix biology with technology.
Yeah, some sort of nano robots or something. Yeah. They're talking nanites or something in passing. They don't really go into what it is, but no, it's...
Yeah, and it's done via a little bit of black biological oil or something, and takes you on this experience for a few seconds, and you feel like you're really somewhere, I think it's an interesting idea. I mean, that could really take us somewhere in the future, couldn't it, I think?
I think it's not actually as far-fetched an idea as perhaps it could be.
Yeah, definitely.
What it might seem.
Yeah.
I'll talk about that more later. But down to our three categories. Hope, warning, or experiment. Mark, what is this?
Yeah, so I think this one is a warning because I suppose...
Warning.
That's right, we need the dialects, don't we, doing that? Yeah, warning because really in the film we're playing with our brains and it's portrayed in a very dangerous way, I suppose. So the story that her main motivation, of course, is, and we'll get into this with the plot, but is trying to save her brother who's in a coma. And of course that doesn't work out. When she realizes that, she sort of wants to stop the whole thing, doesn't she? She realizes the danger of playing with our brains. So, to me, it's a warning. Yeah.
Warning. I'm going to disagree with you on this one. Okay. I can see the warning in there, but I think it's hope.
Okay.
Because of exactly that, she's reaching into someone's brain and giving them choices. Her brother chose to move on, and most interestingly enough, she was then able to make that choice to move on too, because she was stuck on a repeating loop of trying to save her brother for however long, it's a couple of years or something.
Yeah.
So I think there's hope there that this sort of technology will give us more choices rather than taking them away from us, which is nice.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, bit of a disagreement there on that. So what have you been up to yourself, Surrey, as the great writer, now that you're out there on Amazon with your...
Yeah, Amazon. This is my exit plan. Currently available on Amazon and Kindle Unlimited.
Yes. So digital at the moment, is it in paper, print? I saw online you were talking a bit about that.
Yeah. Amazon doesn't deliver print books to Australia through the Australian Amazon thing. So if you're an author and you try to publish a print book through Amazon and you're in Australia, you can't get author copies, you can't get proof copies.
Oh, bummer.
You've got to buy it retail through the American shop, which means that my book was costing about $30 for me to get a sample,
a print copy,
to check to see if it looks okay. Although I also then couldn't get cheap copies for myself to hang out for review or whatever. But otherwise, no, that's now with Ingram Spark.
Okay.
So they're also probably number 2 in the publishing world. They do much of the wholesaling and sourcing of books for all your large book chains.
Okay.
So Dymocks, do they still exist?
I'm not too sure if they do.
If they do still exist,
still exist?
I think they got like bought and then shuffled around and things. They exist in one form or another.
Yeah.
Barnes and Noble
Yeah.
and so on. So I'm in review with them at the moment. That took a lot longer to get through, so that's a bit of a lesson learnt. Up to chapter 2 of book 2.
Okay.
Now, and taking what I've learnt from my self-publishing experience of book 1, I've set up my document format to be ready to go straight as soon as I finish.
Yeah. So you're not dealing with that later.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise I've been reading about the black hole photograph, which the most exciting thing about that is it's proof that there are black holes.
Yeah.
Because previously we had very good reason to believe there were. All the mathematics says there were, but we didn't have any sort of real telemetry or input from it. And this was 5 petabytes, or I don't know, maybe that's too small, maybe it's 500 petabytes. Some huge. There's so much data that rather than sending it over the internet, they literally packed it into a truck and shipped it around, dropping off hard drives, because it was quicker than trying to send it any other way.
Yeah, right.
And there was, embarrassed to say, I can't remember the woman's name, who came up with the underlying algorithm to stitch together a lot of the data, without which we would not have this photograph. So good on her. She knows who she is.
I did read, and you might have read more than me about it, but that basically then that photograph is like 60 million years old. So sort of people have said it's, if when the dinosaurs were on Earth, they looked up in the sky, they might have seen this thing.
Yeah, well,
that's how much time has changed in space.
That's a problem with looking out into space. These pictures we have of galaxies are
They're old.
From before we were ever around.
Yeah, I know. It's bizarre, isn't it, to get your head around sometimes, I reckon that.
Oh, the other thing, of course, is space is expanding 9% faster than our previous models have said.
Wow,
and they believe that the chance of that being an error has gone from about a 1 in 100 to a 1 in 100,000.
Okay.
So they've increased by several orders of magnitude the accuracy of this measurement. And so they're saying, well, we don't entirely know why the universe is expanding faster than what our measurements of, and this comes back to this distance. So they're measuring movements of stars in the Pleiades nebula galaxy. So there's a nebula and a galaxy involved. Anyway, they're measuring this movement between these stars and galaxies and nebula, and extrapolating from that and inserting, of course, gravitational constants and speed of light and so forth, and they come up with rate of expansion, how fast everything's moving away from each other.
Yeah.
And when they work it out on a bit of paper, as I've done many times, they come up with one number, but when they measure it using the Hubble telescope, they've come up with a bigger number.
Yeah, right.
And that means that some constant or number or variable in their equation is wrong. And that's really interesting, because obviously all of these astrophysicists and astronomers are looking at their numbers and going, well, that one we believe is totally right. That one we believe is totally right. All of these numbers and constants we believe to be totally right. So we've got 9% error, which means there's some factor in space-time which we haven't accounted for, or that we have not gotten. So that's very exciting. It means we don't know everything.
No, there's more of the unknown. Good for us science fiction writers to develop and think that, well, yeah, science can always be experimented or changed up, can't it?
Oh, yeah, there's a lot to go yet.
Like what we're talking with Alien, just being an actual alien, very different.
And yourself, what have you been up to? It's been 2 weeks now.
Yeah.
4
No,
weeks,
I've gotten my feature scripts actually got into what I would call like a second draft, so it's quite nice and tight. It's coming in at 93 pages, which is really nice. It still needs a solid run through
Well, they
again.
say 1 minute per page, roughly speaking.
And what I've read out of Final Draft's advice at the moment from Hollywood's point of view is they've decreased it actually. So they want it, the trend now, if I can talk properly, the trend now is about 90 to 100 pages. So they've whereas 10 years ago they were pushing them up to 110 pages. Obviously very different for things like the Avengers. Those things like 300 pages long.
That was a 3-hour movie.
Yeah, I know.
Man.
Tell me about it.
I don't think I can sit through that.
No, and to be honest, that puts me off going to even see it, because it just feels like it's too long. I don't know if I have that attention span.
Well, you need a bit of a break there somewhere. I've been to 3-hour movies before.
Yeah.
Some of the one of the Lord of the Rings and
and Avatar was very long. I know I think I went for a toilet break during Avatar, which is very unusual for me, but it's just sort of the way it goes now. They're so long that you're kind of thinking, that's the midpoint. I'm going to the toilet. I'll be back. So, but for myself, it's a nice tight script and I'm pretty happy with it actually. So now I want to go through and just make sure some of those formatting things, like when you do things like flashbacks and stuff, that I'm just doing them to the standard. So now, so that to me is really great. It's it's just that technical proof now.
Yeah.
And I've also seeked out a couple of competitions to enter it in later in the year. So I'm going to head for that. And then also sort of send it off to a couple of people overseas. So just sort of see where that goes. And I've also been asked to shoot a little micro doco actually.
Nice.
So, which is not science fiction at all. So, but yeah, I'm excited about planning that, meeting the people on Monday, and we'll kind of go from there. So yeah, just getting those creative juices going behind the camera.
Great. You should start talking to Screen West and Lottery West.
Yes, yeah,
they
definitely.
They funded very heavily this movie, Otherlife.
Yes, they did. They did.
It's all shot here in WA.
Yeah, which is exciting.
I'd love to go into that more in a little bit.
Yep, and we will. The brief overview of Otherlife is basically, it's a very loose plot on the novel Solitaire.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No, I
so I wrote this down, and I'm just trying to look at my notes again now, which is a book by Kelly Eskridge. She's a science fiction novelist, short story writer. She's been around for quite a while writing stories, and they picked up, obviously, the options for this. This film takes on the book is more about the virtual reality prison. That's the main character is kind of in the prison. So the filmmaker and Ben and the other scriptwriter, Gregory Whidden, took on that sort of idea and expanded it. So the idea in this story was, of course, we have the female protagonist, Ren Amari. She's a high-tech researcher who develops a form of biological virtual reality, and she's deliberately developing it to try to help her brother come out of the coma that we find a bit out in the early stages of the film. And then her business partner insists that they kind of use that virtual reality for prison system, which is ironically kind of the opposite of what she's trying to do for her brother, is trying to get him out of the prison of the coma. So she's really against it. And then when her boyfriend tries the stuff and dies in front of her, they give her that option of, well, you could trial the virtual reality prison system or go to jail for murder. And so she does, and she goes into the prison. So yeah, it's a really interesting idea, this idea of virtual reality, but just with the mind, using some sort of biological nanobot technology that's been developed previously, and these people having experiences, and through the company of other life.
Although I looked at that scene where she goes into the prison, and it's solitary confinement, which for more than a few days actually starts to really mess with people.
Definitely.
So putting someone in solitary for a year, that seemed a little bit rough.
Yeah, I kind of thought, geez, it's a. At first, when they said the prison system, I thought, oh, this is genius. Can you imagine politicians saying, we don't have to have prisons anymore. We're just going to implant them with this. It only use a few seconds of their life, and yet they could be locked away for years. And then they're coming out like they've lived years in a prison in isolation. And we don't have to build prisons anymore. They could just be done in a hospital scenario or setting, very cheaply for the public. You don't have to have these physical prisons anymore yet.
And they'd be back out, receding,
they would be
returning to their life of crime that much faster.
Yeah, that's the question, mate. You sort of think, well, hang on, they're out. But then
I was thinking, though, you could, rather than... Because the idea of prison, I suppose there's two ideas. One is for dangerous people is to take them out so they're not dangerous.
Yeah.
But then for the large portion is actually supposed to be some sort of reform process.
Yeah, rehab, isn't it? Yeah.
So could you imagine you put them into some sort of a virtual scenario where they are able to reflect on what has gone past and how life works, and you could do education programs so they can actually gain some skills and come to learn, to use a cliche term, the error of their ways.
Yeah.
Which I think would rather be better to learn a better way of doing things and dealing with emotion and their impulses.
Yeah, yeah.
So a few minutes, they get sentenced, a few minutes in, and then they're out, and it's like they've spent a year at a Buddhist monastery contemplating the zen of their life.
But then I want to commit crime to go do that, sorry, because that sounds pretty good.
Well, that's where we come in, which is go, well, okay, let's preempt that. How about at school you can sign up for self-improvement where you are given, like, you don't have to spend 4 years, 5 years at university doing a philosophy course. You can spend a couple of minutes walking around Plato's garden, discussing and learning about...
Maybe we would eliminate crime completely if you could just plug into something and, because if you're at school, so school-age children, they're not enjoying something, they could plug in for a few seconds and get some sort of amazing experience.
They could get personalised learning process. Because, as we know, different people learn differently. Some people learn... I was very lucky that I learned very well from reading.
Yep.
Which really worked very well because a lot of my teachers would just sort of put up notes on the board and I'd just copy it. Fortunately, that sinks in very well into my head, whereas I know a lot of other people have to have... a physical experience with the learning, and some people they get exposure, ding, light turns on a couple of years down the track.
Yeah, that's right.
It'd be great for that. It's full of all sorts of promise.
Yeah, definitely. So this film is not really set anywhere particularly, like it's not said where it is, but we recognised the city. Yeah,
they didn't say where it was, but you could tell it was Australia.
Yeah, it is Australian, and
everyone in it's Australian.
Yes,
cars are driving on the left-hand side of the road.
Yep. And I mean, it's a recognised city for us because it's our hometown.
It's our hometown,
Perth.
and as a result, I got a few disorienting moments there because the outside of her studio where their company was doing their stuff. They shot there's a dumpster and there's that mural on the wall. You just sort of see a couple of funny skinny little legs and that body. That's Wolf Lane, and that's just behind my office building.
Yeah,
I looked out of my window and looked there, and I've been inside. That's actually a pub that they're standing in front of.
Right.
The Wolf Lane Bar, which I went to for a Christmas party.
Yep.
So I found it quite funny. They're standing there, and then they go around through there's a roller door there, and that was going down into her lab. But then. She was driving, and then her apartment, I can see her apartment building from my place as well.
Yeah.
Because I recognised the reverse angle of vision she had. Because I'm looking at this apartment block over near the Crown Casino in that direction. You can see if you were sitting in that apartment building looking back at me, you would have, like, it's got the balconies. I can see the balcony she had in the glass, and I thought, that's her apartment over there.
Yeah, yeah.
And she went to drive to work through the Graham Farmer Tunnel, heading east.
Yep.
But she works down here in the centre of the city, which is west, which you wouldn't take the Graham Farmer anyway. You'd just come down the terrace or something. It's kind of confusing.
But they're not logically...
No.
It's the magic of movie.
In the movie, it works perfectly. It looks brilliant.
There's a film a couple of years ago, These Final Hours, which is it's like an Armageddon film. It's coming to the world. And it's Australian, and it's shot in Perth again. And in that, he's very similar. He drives around Perth, and he's actually naming where he's going, so it's set in Perth. And but there's places that you see he drives down the street and he's saying he's in that suburb, and I'm like, well, I know that place. That's not in that suburb. That's in another. And then he goes up into the hills and he's saying it's like Coburn. You're like, well, the Coburn's not in the hills, and it's just you see, and he drives through like things like the tunnel and the city or whatever, and it's like, well, that's not the way, as you're just saying, to that direction. But no one knows that on the outside.
But the tunnel looks great.
Yeah, it does. That's the thing.
It makes it look like a futuristic thing, because it's literally a tunnel that just sort of disappears underneath a suburb.
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
I've gone running over top of that tunnel, and I've gone running through the tunnel.
Yeah.
And there's a park and a McDonald's on top of that tunnel. And the office building that I worked in many years ago was just next to it. And so it's a great shot. Yeah. And I think,
and they flip it as well as the car comes by. They actually flip the shot, and I was like, oh, that's interesting, you know. So it's disorientating as well, so it makes it look even a bit more bizarre. And it is something we can talk about a bit later, the technicalities. But coming from Perth, they make Perth look very futuristic.
It looks fashionable.
Yeah,
and
it looks large.
The nighttime skyline shots of all the lights and everything. It looks quite technological.
That's right. It
metropolitan.
It's not supposed to be, I don't think, this film far in the future, but it just gave it that feel that, this is a bit of a clean, futuristic city, busy city and stuff like that. And even when they shot,
Perth is quite a clean, busy city.
So it fits. And even there's a tiny little few seconds on the train, and of course they chose it coming over the Narrows.
Yeah, I recognise that because I take that every day.
From the Mandurah line, but it was just a nice little shot because the city's blurred in the background, so you're just seeing big buildings behind her, and then obviously she also walked over the Narrows suddenly, when she was escaping, and there's a billboard that doesn't exist, and they've plonked that on there, but again, it's quite, it's only a couple of seconds shot, and you can see the city's blurry, and there's a billboard, and she's again out of context of where she came from, because she came from the bush, And
so you feel a bit famous yourself knowing
those places, I was
camping down there at Albany in Denmark on Easter.
Yep.
So I came back and I watched it, and she and her brother at the start are swimming in Albany.
Yeah, right.
And that metal walkway that projects out over, that's like a little tourist thing.
Yeah, of course.
We were going to go on, but it was kind of later in the afternoon.
I wondered, I knew it was down south somewhere. Yeah. It just had that feel to it, but I didn't know where, so it's good. There you go, you've spotted it.
Because when we're there, we're going to a couple of these lookouts. If you haven't been to Albany or Denmark, and I don't imagine in the world population not many people have, but it is very spectacular. Like the ocean, whereas the rest of Western Australia is really old, so it's quite weathered and it's very flat. You go down there to Albany, and there's this big bay opening, and the ocean comes in, and it's not just, it's real wild open ocean. Yeah. Suddenly it's in these bays with these huge granite cliffs, and it's really dramatic.
It is,
and I'm not surprised that they filmed down there, because when I was looking down there, one of the outlooks on the left hand side, you see this great big sweeping bay where all the surfers are in there. It's a bit protected, and then on the right hand side, it was so windy. I was leaning into the wind; it was holding me up, and the waves were these monstrous things crashing over worn granite outcrops.
Yeah, those rocks are amazing, aren't they?
It was stunning to watch. Yeah. It was just absolutely breathtaking. Yeah,
well, I mean, the next thing after there is Antarctica. So you're talking a big ocean. It's the same Augusta, which is not far away. You go to that southwest tip of Australia, and it's where the two oceans hit. And you kind of think, two oceans. I mean, humans are the ones that say there's two oceans there. But you look out on that point, and it is brutal. Like, the ocean is brutal out there. You can just see it, you feel it. The wind is something, as you say, will like knock you over and all that. So, beautiful part of the world. And these places that you choose to shoot for a film like this really tell a lot, I think, and really demonstrate a lot. So we probably should run through a bit about the plot. A couple of the main characters. We have Ren Amari, played by jessicadegouw. I believe that's how you say it. Her boyfriend, Danny, played by thomascocquerel. And we also have the famous tjpower playing her partner, who's kind of the bad guy, playing the character of Sam. So all Australian actors. Jessica is in a very big American TV show at the moment. Arrow, yeah. So that's been broadcast all over the place in the States. So she's done quite well. And actually, I don't have his name, but the father as well, famous role, the lawyer from The Castle. I don't know his name off the top of my head, but he's been a lot in Aussie TV. So solid cast, solid Australian actors. And I thought for acting, they all stood up. They all played their roles really well.
And who was that other guy? The other partner?
The coder.
Yeah, well,
I didn't get his name, actually.
He was really good, though.
He was really good. Because he kind of was her friend and then a bit of a bad guy, and then he kind of came back around again at as a friend mode, didn't he? I don't know his name. We should have looked his name up, actually. So might come to that in a moment. So we do start, as you say, we're down south, beautiful beach. Ren and her brother are diving, swimming with wetsuits. And then we realise that something goes wrong with her brother. She's trying to do CPR, but in fact, then she wakes up and it's a memory. It's a virtual memory, and it's like she's been taking drugs, isn't it? She's got all the empty canisters,
little ampules
in front of her.
And she's got the black draining out of her eye.
So the impression is, she's addicted to something. We find out that then she's a coder who's got this product where, for the company Otherlife, where it's coding and biology, the idea is to create memories. Her brother is in a coma. She visits him and she tests a bit on him, but it doesn't do anything to him. And she's trying to sort of bring him back. We get that impression. Her business partner, Sam, is trying to sell the idea. So we have a scene where he's trying to pitch the idea to so-called investors. And there's a couple that he seems to be connected to. And then Ren confronts him over that, and it's the prison system. She thinks that's unethical and they shouldn't do it. We then kind of get to a scene. She's testing the products and we see the product in action, which is a skiing scene. So it's she goes under, it's only a few seconds, and she has this wild time down a mountain, looks fabulous. And the whole idea is they're clocking hours to make sure the code works and everything. But in fact, even though she has this great moment, she reawakens again on the slopes, and she's stuck there. It kind of glitches. And we have a great moment. She's saying to herself, it's only code, it's only code. And as the whole thing collapses onto her, she awakens. So she kind of brings herself out.
The Matrix, Neo.
Yeah, sort of that idea, awakening.
Discovers, it becomes aware of herself within the simulation.
And we say Matrix, there is some connections to the Matrix in this movie. Even that idea that you were saying before, like going under and learning a skill. Well, in the Matrix, you want to learn Kung Fu? Yeah, hell yeah. You plug in and you can learn things in seconds. So there is a connection there. But it's pretty much just that, I think. Her boyfriend, she's not happy with the business model and the business coming along, and she meets up with her boyfriend. You can tell as a relationship they have really bad sex, basically. And obviously they're not really on the same page, and she gets him to try it, and he does the skiing and experience, and he loves it. It's better than the sex. He has a little orgasm over it, I thought. And so they're happy in that moment, and he's like, well, I'll try another product. And he tries the one she's been working on for the brother, and he basically dies in front of her in her bedroom. She's arrested, and she's offered a deal. The deal is she could be a bit of a guinea pig for the prison system, or she can be trialed for murder.
Yeah.
So it's a good taking us into the second beat of the film, isn't it?
And I think she realises that if she's done for murder and put away, then she can't keep working on a cure for her brother, to wake her brother out of this coma.
Because the whole thing is, even though she's going to be put away for, I think the deal is a year, it's only a few seconds of her life.
Yeah.
So for her brother, she's only away for a few seconds. The glitch, of course, is it is a prison and she'll be stuck in it. It's isolation. And of course, no one has ever been under that long. Yeah. So we've learned...
Under simulation that long.
Yeah, under simulation.
The longest was the skiing on, which was about 3 days.
Yeah.
And the prison, 365 days. Yeah.
So that was good. And I really thought, this is a good beat in the film. They've taken this character, we've learnt a lot about her, and now it's like the fun and games of the movie. It's a great
change of pace at that point where you're sort of moving along with this corporate sort of toing and froing of financial difficulties, worried about brother, and then suddenly, bang, it's actually, no, she's in a prison now. What's she going to do? Because the very next thing is that she gets to day 365, it goes down and it comes, and the little number comes back up. She's thinking, okay, now it's going to reset and she'll be out.
Yeah.
No, it goes back to 1.
Yeah.
And so she...
Terrifying.
She freaking loses it.
Yeah.
And then she escapes, discovering that, in fact, she wasn't in a simulation.
No, they'd locked her up.
They'd drugged her instead and locked her up. And so she goes off chasing that, trying to discover what's going on, what's happened to her brother, and
the business and all that sort of stuff.
And chasing up her boyfriend. And
yeah. Well, at first she doesn't know her boyfriend. She thinks her boyfriend's still dead.
Yeah.
And there's a great scene. I like films that do this, where there's a bit of a mystery to the main character, where she runs to the police, because that's what we all say we would do, wouldn't we? We'd be like, run to the police. I've been kidnapped. I've been locked away for a year in a cell, and they look her up. I'm so pleased
she did that.
Yeah, I was glad she did that, because so many movies it's like the police are scary or whatever, but she did that. But then in this case, which I really liked, it's quite terrifying. The police are like, well, you're not on the system. It says here that you've been in Italy.
Yeah. There was a missing persons report filed, but it was never followed up.
Yeah, no one followed it. There's no crime against you. You're free to walk around. There's no reason for us to be here.
You'll wander off if you want.
And she pleads with them to, come visit where I was. And they go there, and of course it's all been, stripped out, and they just walk away. And I like that, because so many films, there is that moment with the police, or even if they visit the police like, no, and that's kind of it,
we've got more important things.
Yeah, we've got more important things to do than a missing woman for a year.
Then someone claimed to have been held hostage.
Yeah, we wouldn't investigate that, So I liked that, and then she can't go to her apartment. She's got no ID. She's got no money. She meets up with the IT woman from the work, which I was thinking, the IT role comes into play in this movie, and she reveals that her boyfriend actually is alive. He's still alive. So that's a shock. So she didn't end up murdering him or, causing his death, so to speak. Cass, the IT girl, that's her name. And the thing is then, with meeting Danny and Cass, they have a scene. They say, well, look, we can help you out. We made lots of money from the company. We're all doing well. But she says she doesn't care about the company, the money. It's all about the code, and she wants to get her code back.
That she'd been recording from her brother.
For her brother and from her brother, whatever. So, it's great, because as a motivation of a character, she doesn't care about those other superficial things. She just wants the exercise back. And they break into the beautiful big Otherlife building. Do we know which building that was?
The Otherlife building?
In Perth? I was trying to figure it out. I sort of thought, is it that the Hawaiian building, it's in the main, next to Woodside, and so it's between Woodside and sort of BHP up that side, is it? Because I felt like that was the angle, but anyway, I might be wrong. So anyway, they do break into the building. They confront, did we get that guy's name?
Clarence Ryan is the actor.
Yeah. And what's the character's name?
The character's name is Byron.
Byron, that's right. Byron. Such an Australian name.
Byron
Finbar. Byron the coder.
G'day, mate. My name's Byron
admits
Finbar.
He's not as smart as Ren, but he's up there. So, yeah, they break in. She gives him a good punch, which I liked in that scene, and she gets her code back. Danny and Ren escape to her dad's hillside mansion. That's where you're talking about the scene of the tunnel and stuff,
Yeah.
And again, the mansion they go to, it's up in the Perth Hills, and it's, such a beautiful location. But it had a nice futuristic feel to it, that place.
Yeah,
it was a bizarre
nice
place.
Sort of angles.
Yeah, it had lots of angles, and staircase was really good.
But then some classic furniture inside that you'd expect a university professor to have.
That's right. Yeah. Apparently that's how they all live.
I don't know where he got all that money from.
I don't know either. He obviously did something. And in that, she makes up with Danny and also her dad. So that's kind of a nice moment. And she's able to print the answer, which is she designed a choice program whereby you could change your memories. But she says that it's bad because it's like a drug. And that's why I go back to why I said it's a warning.
Well, she says that Sam is trying to make it like a drug, take out the choice, make it just a linear rush.
Right.
So from start to finish, you're just on a ride.
Yeah.
Whereas she said the whole point was...
giving the brain options.
Everyone's a choice, and you choose to have the good time.
Yeah.
Which is why she asked her boyfriend there, why did you choose to drown? Because I don't think she directly asked him, but the fact is that he had the...
No, he asked her, and she says, you chose the wrong option, basically.
Yeah, why didn't you choose to swim up? Because I didn't realise I could.
Yeah. So that's the danger element, I suppose,
It's another sort of message, though, is that a lot of people...
choose the wrong path.
They feel a bit trapped in a situation, and from the outside you look and you go, why don't you just choose...
Yeah,
just walk that direction, you'd be sweet.
Yeah. Just quit your job. Just
I
do
didn't know
something
I
else.
could do that.
Yeah. It's so true, isn't it? It's easier on the outside. Anyway, so she prints out the drug at the dad's kind of garage, which we presume something that she's been working on previously, and also Otherlife are working on the same things. She solves it. She solves the glitch in the coding, and she goes straight to the brother, gives it to him. He kind of awakens with a dodgy eye, doesn't say anything, just really stares at her, and then dies. Dies in front of her.
You sort of get that feeling that he recognises that she's there.
Yeah.
And then he stops recognising. His eyes sort of go glassy. And
they do.
And
I wasn't sure in that bit.
I
don't know if you remember, but he's sort of shaking and dying, and she pulls the plug. I don't know if
it's beeping. And it flatlines. And
so I'm not sure. Did she pull his life support? Is that kind of the idea in that?
It was just, he'd flatlined and it was just going, and then she pulled it. And it was a bit suspicious, of course. No medical staff came charging.
They didn't come running.
Sam walked up and said...
Suddenly he's there, yeah.
Yeah, he's like, well, what did he say when he walked in? He said, I can't remember.
I can't remember the exact words, but yeah, he was there and he confronted her.
Yeah, so you've worked it out then.
Yeah.
And she says, where'd you come from? How are you here? And that's when she wakes up. She starts having flashes of being back at the place where she was put under.
Yep.
And in fact, she wakes up and finds out that she wasn't drugged and locked away in a box anywhere. She actually was just experiencing the prison.
Yeah, the whole thing was the prison. Yeah. Well, or how her mind dealt with the prison.
So she wakes up and punches the guy again.
Yeah. Which is great. In reality.
This time.
Punches TJPower out.
But
he had no power in that
scene. She points out, although Sam, he points out, the programming of the experience she had was for isolation in a prison.
Yeah.
But she was then out walking around a city talking to people.
That's right, yeah.
And so he says, you've created, you broke out, you created, this is better.
Yeah, this is better. Because they realise the brainwaves, don't they, that there's a bit there you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So what happened? And then that's when they're like, oh, you broke out. That means... that's the bit that we can actually sell stuff. He actually does say, stuff the prisons.
Yeah.
That will be much better. And it's true, isn't it?
And that's where she's worried. She's going, he doesn't want the choices there. He just wants people to have that rush of joy.
Yeah.
Like a drug, which I do not doubt is where this technology would go in some way. There'd be, invariably someone would go, well,
of course.
We just give you like a hit of cocaine without giving you cocaine.
That's it.
Yeah.
Well, they do allude to even the fact when she's been out that then and the company's made a lot of money. They're like, it's sold out and it's big in the tourism sector and porn, and so it's like that, of course, like it's like so. I mean, you do talk about like a drug, like you could be having these little drops and having days orgies with porn stars or whatever, So you could see very clearly it could be a drug, could be used for that. So then there's a good scene where they like manipulate her to try to go back under so they can collect that code for a second time.
And she refuses.
But then TJPower overpowers her.
Oh, he uses TJPower.
But yeah, he does, and it's again, I thought that was nice and realistic because, for him he had nothing, it was the business. So if she pulls out, he's in a lot of trouble. And she does go back under.
It's from Offspring. I was going TJPower, that guy, I'm going, wait, I like Offspring. He's Offspring.
So she goes under, but because she's been able to do it, she pulls herself back out, doesn't she? And forces a drip from her smeared black eyes into his.
Yeah.
And so then we have a great moment where then he's waking up in the isolated prison and it's day one,
Yeah.
And then she does say to Byron that we, grab him and collect the data. And his body's not handling it very well. He's shaking, he's vibrating.
It flips over from 365 to 1.
And she's holding on. Well, she's holding on. He sort of says, we've got enough data now, but she wants him to have that exact experience that she went through, which is 365 and then you think you're coming out, and no, it's another day in there.
It's like when you're working with a personal trainer and they say, you're nearly there, and you're just 2 more, and you're getting to the second one.
You do those 2. And then
5 more. There's
5 more.
5 more.
You do another 5, and then they're like, just another 2.
Yeah.
It never ends. So, yeah, and then we have a good bookend experience, which is she lets go of the brother, so she's letting go of the experience.
She gets to
brother.
make this choice. I think she saw, even though it was actually only in her own head, that she sort of experienced this connection with her brother. I think she experienced his point of view more so than anything else, is that, and talking with her boyfriend in the hallucination or the simulation that he chose to drown because he didn't see any other way. Yeah, she went, oh, okay, well, this is the way things are going to have to go. This is the way life is playing out. Yeah. And it's me who didn't realise I had the option to let go.
To let go of her brother,
And so now she's going, oh, I didn't think I could just continue on without him.
Yeah.
Turns out she could.
Yeah, so it's a nice kind of...
A nice ending. The nicest part about the ending was there's no little flash, ooh, maybe she's still hallucinating.
That's right.
That really...
No, they didn't do that, did they?
Those, you can only... I don't think you can do that anymore. It's such a cheap shot of, or was it just a dream? And you kind of go, no, just... What, you're going to throw away the entire experience of the movie because it could have just been a dream? No.
That's right.
But no, they didn't. They turned off. It's really good.
Yeah, that's great. What was your viewing experience like?
That was nice. So watching on the couch with my wife, we both enjoyed it very much. We both enjoyed watching the scenes of Perth because, as I said, we'd just come back from camping where we had stayed down in Denmark and visited Albany, and we'd seen those scenes where she's with her brother, and the scene on the train heading into Perth there over the Narrows. I do that ride every day, so I know that exact stretch of train track, and it was a really, you feel as if you've got a little touch of fame there because I've been on that train.
I could have sat in that seat.
But it was quite nice because the train had a very futuristic feel because the trains are really very new. Yeah, the train line to Perth to Mandurah, which is the one that she was on, it's only been around since 2007 or something.
Yeah.
And the trains themselves are only probably 5-6 years old, the ones that are on the Mandurah line. Some of them are a bit older, but... So you get that sort of clean, fresh, and it looks modern, futuristic, in fact, as opposed to you go to Sydney and they're older trains and a lot more people on them, and that's more of a Blade Runner future.
That's right. I looked it up as well. You can hire, you can film on PTA property and trains for $500 a day for commercial reasons. If it's for non-commercial reasons, you can just do it for free. So there you go.
So you're allowed to take a selfie is what they're saying.
Oh, yeah. They can't stop that, can they? I was on the train one night and there was girls like taking model photos of each other, just with their phones. But they were like all, doing the whole setup with the pole and the chairs and everything. I was like, well, okay. PDA doesn't really care too much. My viewing experience, I did just watch on my own, but I got to say that I think I'm a little bit harsher on the films when they are Australian. I think it's just my built into my personality a bit, but and even looking at like you and I talked about, that she's going in the wrong direction if she wants to go to that suburb, or that doesn't go there, or that's that building, that wall is there, but it's not the same building on the outside, and it does take me a little bit out of that viewing experience, because instead of being sucked totally into the world. But I did think at the same time, like, wow, they've shot Perth in a really nice way. Like it does. They've been very clever, and it looks like a big city. It looks a bit futuristic, as I said before, clean, advanced. The train looks great. The cityscape looks great. So I think they were really clever. They really shot the right spots. They really got some good location. They chose wisely. So even though I think I was a bit distracted by that, I suppose is the way of the viewing experience. And I've had that with a couple other Australian films as well, where I'm a little bit more critical of, I know where that is shot, takes a bit of the mystery out. And it did make me wonder, and if you're listening to this podcast, has a movie been shot in your town and you've seen it and it takes you a bit out of that experience too? Or is it more exhilarating that, hey, that's my town? Yeah. So let us know on the social media accounts. I'd love to know. So the relative preference, the ladder, we did say with Alien, it's getting its own groundbreakers ladder.
Yeah.
So Alien's over there. But on the ladder, we have so far the Lobster.
The Lobster.
Right, Passengers, The Beyond, and then Equals. For me, I think this one comes in under The Lobster. That's where I want to put it as a rung on that ladder. I just feel like it was a really interesting sci-fi idea. I loved the technology. I loved the way the city was shot. Like, it felt nice. It felt futuristic. I think it was also just such a straightforward
We had
sci-fi.
Passengers equals The Beyond. I'm sure of it.
No.
No?
Equals is, well, I had it as my lower rung, not my bottom rung. I don't want to say that. It's just as a lower rung. Because we enjoy watching here.
Equals is on my bottom.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh.
No, that's just the order I've got. That's the order I got in. So you can have your own ladder. We can disagree on this. We talked about this with one of the others, but yeah. So for me, it's The Lobster, Otherlife, Passengers, The Beyond, Equals. What about you, Surrey? Which rung do you want to put it on?
It's a hard one because there's some of the things. Equals, I think, had a couple of I found more dramatic or touching moments, and Passengers just very slick Hollywood production.
Of course, yeah.
It's sort of, I almost want to penalise it because it was so well done.
It was so well done, yeah, that's right.
But
we can agree to disagree on this. We probably should do some social media ladders. That's what we should do.
I'm going to put it in mine just under Passengers.
Okay.
Otherlife.
Fair enough.
So for me, I think we've deviated here. For me, it's The Lobster, Passengers, Otherlife. And for you, it's The Lobster, Otherlife, Passengers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then The Beyond and Equals.
And that's largely because Passenger had some nice AI and beautiful spaceships and a fusion generator.
Yeah, fair enough.
And that just combined with, they're both very well produced movies, but Otherlife was quite good. It had a bit of IT in it. But if they just got into space or mentioned spacecraft or something, maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
She had an artificial intelligence that she talked to. Something like that.
I mean, in categories, I guess, like Equals did mention space. Remember, they were sending off rockets to find out about humanity, and so they were doing that. It did make me think that I think you and I were talking a bit before about maybe prison being a reward system rather than a punishment system. So people go into, instead of being solitude and being punished for a crime, it's like rehab, retreating them, not rewarding them so much, but like trying to rehab them into better citizens. That maybe over the long term it would be a society like Equals.
Yeah, more it would get more.
Would it become like that? And again, even if you then backtrack and you say, well, let's prevent crime, let's get teenagers into these advanced virtual reality systems that teach them something really quickly and maybe bring a lot of joy or advance their skills. I mean, it could be it could end up a society like Equals, isn't it? Because
could you imagine if you went along, because maybe I can imagine there'd be an minimum age, because you'd want your brain to have been developed before you chuck it in there. So could you imagine a society where until the age of 21, you're free to play and muck about, like you've got.
You don't even have to learn.
You've got a bit of schooling and so forth. So so you have some. You're going to need some education, but you don't have any responsibility. At 21, you go and everyone becomes at least largely proficient in physics, mathematics, English, literature, psychology, self-awareness, and mindfulness. So by the age of 23, 24, you've gone through so many of these things that every sort of 24 plus year old is kind of really self-aware and enlightened and good at negotiating and talking and discussing the issues. War just becomes a thing that the kids play because it's still going to be a fun game. But the adults who have gone through this training process have had so much knowledge and so much exposure to other ideas and an expansion of mind that they're able to talk to one another to resolve difficulties. And there's so many people with good ideas and scientific background and so forth that, we end up something more like Equals, where we're sort of pursuing things that we enjoy and benefit society rather than trying to just make the biggest pile of cash we can.
And in saying that as well, you could on the day you turn 21, if you run via this film, maybe you would just have to go under virtual reality for an hour and you would have learnt everything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Maybe an hour's even too long. So you would literally go in there, a 21-year-old with basic education, you've been playing around with your mates, skateboarding, surfing, having fun, drinking, whatever, and then within an hour you would be like a professor of everything.
Well, see, this is why I thought it might span over a few years to let it sink in or something. But yeah,
that would be really interesting, but as a society, wouldn't it? Like,
almost immediately you're suddenly...
Your old friends you would not be able to be friends with anymore. You know, if they were under 21, you'd almost be, no, darling.
Yes,
Can't talk to you now.
I shall wait till you've graduated.
Yeah, wait till your graduation, yeah.
Next month.
So instead of going to university, you go to this program.
Yeah, and there'd be no need to hold it back from anyone. Like there's no need for elitism.
No.
Because it's a little drop in the eye and then pang, you've
right.
got the knowledge and
Government
experience.
funded.
Yeah, there'll still be some stratification because different people take it differently.
But then the what if, of course, which is good for science fiction writers, and maybe people out there listening could take this idea and really run with it. But like then the what if, of course, is like, let's take North Korea. And like, what if you then have a political system like in North Korea, and then so those drops could be used for other purposes.
Total indoctrination.
In total indoctrination. But could also advance a society like that to a whole nother level.
Well, yes, because
and what if they didn't do it at 21? They did it at 5-year-olds or something, or from birth.
That would be very interesting to see this sort of
even though, like you're saying, in
totalitarian structure like North Korea actually working because in North Korea there's a certain acceptance of the status quo. And I'm sure there's a certain belief that is the way things are, because that's all I've ever known. But they're humans, and the fact that they still have political prisoners and they keep...
Yeah, and people
escaping there and tell the stories, and you're sort of going, there's clearly a certain level of unrest, which, of course, destabilises things. So if everyone was perfectly indoctrinated into that system...
That's right, yeah.
So they accepted their hard lot in life and their early death, except for the elites who...
And then very cheaply you could sort of educate them on certain areas, like military advancement or whatever, or chemical, biological warfare or something. And that's the thing, it'd be interesting because then, as you said, like maybe people in a democracy like Australia would be like, oh no, we can solve everything through resolution and talking. But that would be then like the polar opposite, wouldn't it?
We solve everything by brain wiping them and reprogram them with our agenda.
Because I could almost imagine you can educate someone to a level where, because this has already happened, like a philosopher can question the level of philosophy, question life as a whole. So if you educate everyone, they could almost be like, well, no, not elitism, but the idea that we can't, there's not even a point in living anymore. We can just be on the astral plane. And, you do wonder someone like Stephen Hawking, like, why does he hang around? Like, why doesn't he just go off? Is he here to kind of try to teach us some things, or what's the deal with him, So you sort of like that level of brain power that's way above the rest of us. You're there with everyone else, aren't you? But you're thinking something so different. So yeah, it would be, that's bizarre, isn't it? Yeah, there we go.
So let's go on best scene. We're going to keep this tight.
Yep.
One best scene.
Okay, the prison scene. And I know it's more than one, but if I just break it down, just that idea of being locked in solitary confinement. I loved that little numbering system on the wall with the LED lights. And I was just thinking, like, when that happened, the film had its pace, but when that happened, I was like, oh, wow, this is terrifying. This is a horrible idea for someone. And because it was kind of, I think the last thing, just before she went out, it's like, well, it's only a few seconds of your life. But then for her, you could see it was going to be a day by day, And I really do get a bit of a kick out of things like, water bottles all being the same and they're all brand.
All the tuna.
Tuna's all labelled like it's prison brand.
Just like white with the word tuna.
Tuna. I always get a kick out of that. And the TV show Lost, when they
you said ran, the military rations.
Yeah, and military rations. That's when you see that in sci-fi and other films, I always love that. But I guess, just as a favourite scene, I really liked that. It was longer than just one scene, but that idea of being locked in that prison.
Well, it's sort of a bit of a montage.
Scene, yeah. And it was good because she, after a couple of days, she broke free of it, didn't she? And she became obsessed over all the literature she knew over brain development and neurosis and, brain development to do with comas and things like that. So she really then got into work, she logically, and that's how she got through it. Yeah. So it was a great scene, that one.
Great
scene.
How about you? Well, my favourite was after she had broken out and she was sitting there with Byron and Sam says, oh, well, if you go on just one more time, and I, at that time I thought, no, hell no, because sure, it was only literally about a minute or two.
Yeah.
But she fully experienced a year of solitary confinement.
Yeah, in her mind.
You're asking for something really just unbearable.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, I could feel it, the tension that rose, and you saw him pick up a little ampule. And the best thing was that Byron, the guy Clarence, what's his last name? Clarence Ryan. Mm-hmm. The expressions that went on his face, he saw him pick it up, he looked up at Sam and kind of looked at Ren, and you're thinking, he's going to tell her, he's going to interrupt, and you see him sort of wobble a bit in his chair.
Yeah, you do see him hesitate, yeah.
And then he sort of, his eyes go down and he retreats a bit, and he's like, and you can tell he's doing that, I'm not sure, I'm going to see how this plays out. And then, the old Sam gets the goop in the eye, and then Byron sort of goes, oh, well, I have to go with this then, I guess. Yeah. I guess this is what we're doing. Because and I like that little sequence because the Clarence Ryan really portrayed the audience so well there. I was like, I could feel the tension, and both my wife and I could see we're sort of moving forward on the couch. I'm like, stop it! You can't let this happen.
Yeah.
And then you see that break in his expression where he sort of collapses a little bit, and you go, he is going to let it happen. And it goes ahead. Yeah. So that scene there, it built up a nice bit of tension by giving us that shot, because quite often you don't see the bad guy pick up the extra bit.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's kind of all that hidden. It's supposed to be, and it's a bit of a shock. But I was reading a bit by Alfred Hitchcock about tension, and he says the difference is you've got two guys sitting at a table talking, and then a bomb goes off under the table, and you get like this shock. Alternatively, the audience knows there's a bomb on the table, and they know it's set to go off at 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
And in the background, there's two people talking. There's a clock, and it's 12:45.
Yeah.
So for 15 minutes, this whole scene, the audience knows there's a bomb going to go off, and they're wondering, is someone going to discover it? Are they going to defuse it in time?
Yeah.
All the way leading up, and old Mr. Hitchcock, Alfie as I call him, we're good mates. He said, one way gives you 15 seconds of excitement, the other one gives you 15 minutes of excitement. Yeah. The exact same scene. And I'll edit that out. And so the old Ben C. Lucas, he did very well in this scene here, because you could see him pick up the ampule.
Yeah.
You could hear his toy. He was manoeuvring around, and we're sort of getting
you can see Byron
his perspective. Byron's having his troubles.
Yeah.
Fighting his little mental fight, and so you can feel it going up and up and up and up. Wondering, he's going to try and get it in her eye, and the only chance they have is Byron, and then he stops, and you go, oh my God, no. And then it all happens.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
that I think, there's some other really good scenes there.
We'll just focus on those two tonight.
Yeah, talking about the security guard.
Yep.
And he was very nice.
Yeah.
Like when she went to the police and it wasn't scary.
Yeah.
The security guard didn't pull the gun. Hey, what are you doing here? Get out of here, I'm going to shoot you. He's like, oh, do you want a cup of tea?
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, okay, thanks. And it's really good. So that's my best scene.
Yeah.
Worst scene?
I didn't really have anything sticking out. I suppose when she came true, or she came free of the memory world, realizing that, she punches the partner, and then so I think she goes sees the brother to sort of say goodbye and stuff, and then they do call her back, and we learn why. I suppose just that as a plot point to me felt a bit dragged on. Like it just maybe it could have just all happened, that she came to, and then they go, oh look, we look at your brain pads. Felt like it finished, and then I kind of I suppose question why she'd go back. Like I sort of thought, why would you go back there? You're done, So I don't know. I liked, like you were just saying, the good scene there, and I do agree. Like, it was very dramatic, but I suppose just as a plot point, it felt a bit like, why would she come back? And they're like offering her a coffee. It's like, you wouldn't go back there for a coffee.
Oh, no, because you'd be
pretty dark on the place,
torn up,
So, but anyway, so not so much as a whole scene, but just as a plot point, I felt that was a bit unrealistic. Yeah. What about you?
I suppose it's trying to get both those sides of the story.
I suppose, yeah.
And I can imagine that it's quite a difficult thing to do.
And it was a good then twist because they're like going, oh, this is the idea. You've got to go back under, and so that's good. It's testing her resolve, isn't it? I'm done. So it is good, I suppose. But it just felt like, why would she? Maybe they needed to go to her. Maybe that would have been better or something for that final scene rather than her coming in. So sort of something like that. Yeah. So it wasn't so much the scene; it was just that plot point. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree. There's I have to agree with that one. I could sort of talk a bit about, I suppose, the whole remembering of the coma process of the swim. I know it seemed a little bit too vague for me at times, but then again, it was just her memories remembering back all the time. So, again, I wouldn't call it a bad scene, but it wasn't, considering the strength of so much of the rest of the film, that one there, it didn't pull me along. It didn't feel, maybe there was some emotional, there wasn't something strongly emotional there. Like, she seemed really connected to her brother.
Yeah.
And we're sort of,
but my wife
and I were sort of going, gee, she seems to really like her brother.
Yeah.
Like, really devoted. Are they twins or something? Or, like, is it, like, there was no, I think maybe some sort of prior incident or something which made her feel especially close.
Yeah.
Maybe he saved her from something or protected her in some way. And so when she loses him there, she's got this obligation. So that's what I think. It felt a little bit vague, that whole memory of her brother, and then why she's so hell-bent on saving him. Like,
see, because there's
so hell-bent on saving
that's right.
as opposed to just being...
There's that movie Gattaca, and the brothers swim, and so, like, again, at the start, you sort of have them swimming and one drowns, and then as the movie goes on, we learn more, like, we get more flashes back to that to learn what actually happened. Did he drown him? And then there was reason for that, for the outcome, but I guess in Otherlife there wasn't. You're right. Like, she was obviously so motivated, so obsessed on trying to save him and bring him back. And maybe you would. It's your brother. You've got this technology. Maybe you just would. But again, as a motivation for the character, they went swimming together obviously a lot. They were close, but maybe they needed more of that at the start.
Yeah, just a little hint there to sort of say why that was a particularly traumatic, because we didn't see. It was just mentioned that he bumped his head and drowned. Yeah, and it's kind of, it seems, I don't know, like, okay, the plot point is to move the story on that her brother is in a coma and she's close to him. So it's kind of unimportant exactly how we got there and anything, but
because he was so instrumental for her motivation.
Yeah,
it might have been nicer to have a longer scene at the start where, we actually see them frolicking in the water and then he hits his head, you know what I mean?
You hear Ben C. Lucas in the background heckling us, saying, "Might have been nice for another 20 million."
That's right.
Yeah, okay.
Screen West needed to give me a little bit more for that scene.
Yeah, we should have bought more lottery tickets.
So, what about the science? Sorry, I know at the start you were pretty excited about the neuroscience. Or
the
brain
because as
power.
It turns out, I've recently read a bit of news. There's this thing called brain-machine interface. Mm-hmm. So the idea that you can directly communicate with computers and computers can directly communicate with you through the brain, no physical or verbal interface.
Yep.
This is of great interest for people who have lost mobility and in particular for locked-in patients. So people like in a coma or who are conscious but totally immobile in all ways. And because the problem is people sort of say, well, turn off their life support, but, well, maybe we should ask them first.
Yeah.
But we can't at the moment.
Yeah.
So, we've got a lot of opportunity there, not just in that, but brain-machine communication. And there's a great story I'll tell you about. But some technology here has just published on the 24th of April. So in the Nature journal, there's a paper called Speech Synthesis from Neural Decoding of Spoken Sentences. The short version is this Gopala Anumanchipali, and I very much apologise to this rather brilliant man for mispronouncing her name, Josh Chartier and Edward F. Chang. They did this great bit of research. The short version is they chucked a bunch of electrodes on some people's brains and particularly recorded the parts of the brain responsible for moving the tongue, the lips, the mouth, and the larynx. And they got the people to basically think about or imagine saying sentences. And then they put the readings, much like in this movie, they got the little head sensory thingo, through a computer which had some fancy pants neural networking in it. I won't go into neural networks at this stage, but artificial intelligence processor, which took all of this information and synthesized what movements of the tongue and lips and mouth and speech parts were being made in order to produce what sounds they're trying to say.
Yeah, awesome.
And they managed to get a 70% hit rate.
Wow.
So these people would read through all of these sentences, and then other people would then listen and try to identify what's being said. Mm-hmm. And they got about 70% accuracy.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
And so they're sort of saying that they've got a lot of fuel now to feed this back in and refine the process. But the idea being that you could talk to someone who can't normally talk back to you. So we're talking about Stephen Hawking. He had a fancy thing which had eye blinks and little movements and bits and pieces put together sentences. But that was choosing words from a dictionary, basically, which would put it together. Whereas this would be, in time, much the same as just talking normally, and your brain would light up those parts as if you were talking, and the computer would provide the voice for you.
Yeah.
And that
the computer interprets those patterns from the brain that would control the tongue and etc.
Yeah, and there's another previous one, study or experiment which was done using neural network processing and dream sequences. So they mapped people's brains, got them to look at a bunch of images, and they recorded their dreams, what was going on in their brain, the dreams. Again, this time was the visual parts of the brain. And then the neural network basically went through Google Images and compared and started piecing together from what the dream state was versus when they're awake looking at images, and then a catalogue of imagery, and mashed it all together, producing images of these people's dreams.
Yeah, right. Wow.
And I can't remember what the hit rate on that was, but it was actually quite good. And there's if you Google it, you can find some images of it and a write-up of it. And it's really these fascinating sort of look like collage type arrangements, computer-generated collage, if you like.
Yeah.
Which were of scenes in the person's dream.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying is that this science in this movie, not as far-fetched as you might think. That we are moving to the point where it's just, that speech synthesis thing, that's largely just a matter of doing enough AI training on an individual in order to find out exactly how their brain works.
Yeah, but I suppose the question there would be, if someone was suddenly in a coma, they would have to know, I mean, they could obviously say this part of the brain is that connected to there, but they would be, the algorithm would be guessing that a little bit, wouldn't it? Whereas if you tested it on you and me, now that we could say what the success rate is, couldn't we, a bit more, So there probably is a bit of refining, but it sounds exciting as. I mean, imagine if you lost someone or you lost the ability to communicate, consciously. That would be incredible.
Yeah, I was just trying to find here, they talk about how well it transfers. So the idea is you train it on one person or several people, and it gets a model of a generic person.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And it transfers. And there was a bit on here about
But 70% is not bad. I mean, like translation services can run at 70%, you know,
Yeah.
so with languages. So,
But anyway,
yeah.
but they did talk about this transference because that's what you have to do. You can't. It's hard to sort of, for example, train it on me.
Yeah.
And then on the hope that maybe I go into a
That's
coma.
right. Like that's the thing with Stephen Hawking. You know, he can communicate, so it's the ability to train a machine to interpret what he's trying to say. But he's conscious, you know, so he can correct
Here's
it.
this other story that I also found is really fascinating. So this is back in 1996. There's this fellow called Phil Kennedy. He got a neurotrophic electrode approved by the FDA. So basically it was able to stick it in there. Which it grows your neurons into the electrode rather than intruding into your brain.
Right.
So it puts it near and draws it out. So with these electrodes... I
wonder who he got to sign up for that.
Well, he grabbed a patient. Her name was Marjorie. The nickname, that's not real name. I'm trying to find the bit. Yeah, unfortunately she died. But anyway, there's this fellow, Johnny Ray. He was a Vietnam vet who loved playing jazz guitar. He was 43 when he became locked in his body by a stroke. So he received an implant in March of 98, which this guy Phil did, and they hooked it up to basically his left hand. So they were telling him, imagine moving your left hand, and that will move a cursor on a screen, and it will hover over a letter, and then if he hovered for long enough, it would select the letter. And so he tried to spell out his name. And it was apparently very exhausting. He's training for about 20 minutes a day is the most he could do. 9 months into the training, Kennedy, that's Phil, and this guy JR were working on controlling the cursor with his brain, spelling his name. He was slowly getting better. And Kennedy was pretty satisfied with his work so far because he was able to spell out his name. Yeah. He said, yes, let's take a break. And so Phil went off and did his thing, and obviously JR didn't because he's locked into his body, he's stuck on a bed. But when Phil came back in, there was like, the cursor was moving around, it was like spelling out, it spelled JOHQQL, like nonsense. Yeah. But then he started a new word and it spelled it PHIL, Phil, which is, he hadn't been practicing. So he spelled out a new word. And so Kennedy came back and went, okay, that's really amazing. That's not too out of this world, but pretty good. Came back the next day for follow-up training and so forth. And let's see, Kennedy visited him at his home and asked him what he thought about when he moved the cursor. And he typed out nothing. Right? And so evidently his brain had adapted to this control such that he no longer had to think about moving his hand. He would just spell stuff out. Right, yeah, wow. So he was reaching that intuitive connection with a machine. And that's the exciting thing, because that talks about this idea of the brain, what's the term called? So the brain is actually able to basically project your sense of self outside of your body. Yeah. And you get this, for example, when you're driving a car, when you're first starting, you've got to look so much. So much effort to try and keep on the lines, and reversing is just about impossible. Yeah. But I've been driving for a millennia and a half now, and I'm sure anyone who's had a bit of experience now, you just drive. Yeah. And you don't consider, you turn into a car park spot, you know where it is. You can feel where your car is. Yeah, yeah. That's sort of a part of it. And there's a great experiment. You can see they do it on YouTube as a prank. It's called the rubber hand experiment. So the idea is that a person sits at a table, they put both their hands on the table, they put a mirror down between, and the person can only see in one side, so they see a reflection of their hand. Is that the way it works? Yeah, they see a reflection of the hand, and then they put a rubber hand down, and so the person can see the rubber hand, and they drag like a feather over the rubber hand, while someone drags the feather over their real hand at the same time, to the point where they stop dragging the feather over the real hand, they just put it over the rubber hand, and they can feel it. Yeah. And the prank videos, they then pull a hammer and hit the rubber hand, and the person freaks the hell out. Yeah. Because their brain has started to actually inhabit that rubber hand as if it was their own. Yes. And so you can see, you start pulling this mind-machine interface with the fact that our bodies can inhabit things that aren't our body.
Yeah.
And you've got, I guess the beyond, where they transfer the brain into the robot body.
Into those robots, yeah.
And you've got any number of these other ones like, I suppose, Pacific Rim and so on, where you could actually have this mind-machine melding and it would become as intuitive as if it were actually your body.
Yeah.
So that's...
It's exciting stuff. It's exciting science, isn't it?
It is amazing. Let's see. There's also virtual reality has a similar effect.
Yeah.
And you've certainly, I don't know if I've never used virtual reality of any real value, but evidently you can get the same falling fear walking up to edges. But they're using it in therapy for example, PTSD.
Yeah.
Because one of the therapies used, cognitive behavioural therapies they use for PTSD and for phobias and so forth, is exposure therapy.
Yeah.
But the problem is, of course, if you're a military veteran and you've got PTSD from combat situations where you're being shot at and there's horrible things happening, you can't expose people to that.
Can't recreate that, can you?
Not in any ethical way.
No.
And it's also not so helpful because part of the exposure therapy is it has to be in a controlled manner. So the person being exposed needs to know that they can pull out.
You can't exactly control a little military exercise right in front of you where people are dying. Because
they do this thing with snakes and spiders where they'll put a snake at the far side of the room and the person, that's cool, and let them approach the snake and they can pull back at any time.
That's right.
So they put the VR on and play through scenarios enough such that you start to get this transference effect. You start to feel as if you're actually, that's what you're seeing through the VR is the real environment. Of course, it's not because it's computer generated.
Yeah.
But then they can start introducing, a helicopter flying overhead, or an explosion in the distance, or a loud car, all these sorts of things.
You can expand that definitely.
And they've had some success with it, and that again, this goes back to treating her brother, trying to expose him to what she thinks is locking him into his mind, so that he can choose to come forward.
Choose to be healthy again,
So we're actually doing that with virtual reality, and this is a type of virtual reality.
Oh, definitely.
So it's the exciting thing is, of course, is you could well imagine in 20, 30 years' time, mind-machine communication will just be standard.
Definitely,
Fighter pilots or race car drivers will have a web of electrodes on their heads. So they might still have some manual controls, but maybe some of the controls will just be intuitive and feedback.
Well, take the military alone. They do a lot of that drone flying from a distance already. And so, the next step of that, of course, would be the pilot is kind of plugging a bit more into it, isn't it?
Yeah, so they feel more like
they feel like they're there and they react more in live combat. And then, of course, on the fun side, gamers push so much technology because it's a big money maker now. Porn as well, but
games,
if we stick with even just games, there's billions of dollars there that they want virtual reality, they want it to be more real, and that could be that next level. Imagine instead of putting on the goggles, you're planting a chip, or you're putting a bit of dye in your eyes that takes you into a gaming world, and it's like you are there. People would pay for that experience. I think this movie, it dabbles on that idea, and it's very true. If what this movie is true, you have a little dab in your eye, and you're then you have an experience. You have an amazing experience that you've always wanted, like skiing down a slope. As we joke, like an orgy with a porn star, like saving the planet or something.
I would
people would do
Jeremy.
that. Well, it depends on your particular taste. Whatever you want. But you know what I'm saying. Like you're driving an F1 and winning a race, an F1 race or something, like experiences for everyday people that you can't achieve. And by the way they dabbled in this movie, they're saying that it's real, this is a memory now. This is implanted in you. It's not like just playing a game and it's a game. It's you are there doing it. So
that's why I found it hard to believe they couldn't get funding. You would have billions of dollars of funding in this.
Yeah.
Especially if you just have a little 5-minute demo, which is, you don't need a whole day skiing the slopes. If it was just 5-minute experience where you're standing on the top of the mountain and then bing, you're back again. They would be like, okay, how much money?
Yeah, how much do you want? You know, like
how much can I give you? Because
but I suppose it is a realistic thing, isn't it? Plenty of people have great ideas and technology, and they're trying to pitch to people they're not interested.
I think what they didn't go into is of course the massive danger concerns.
That's right, yeah.
And the liability involved if you actually funded this to market. You know, the first person who had an aneurysm,
that's right. Anything like that would pretty much destroy
Total Recall style incident would be trouble.
Yeah. So look, and you're just saying Total Recall. So I think with technicalities of the film, you know, there's a connection to the Matrix. You know, plugging into the Matrix, plugging into the machine. Total Recall, you're right, having that. You know, especially the original Total Recall. You know, Arnie, come here, you're having the experience. It's like a dream. It's bigger than a dream. It's a real world. Holiday to Mars, and of course he freaks out. So you're exactly right. Like if this was real and someone took the drug, and then what if they thought then, you know, their experience, they're real. You know, like they're really there. They'd be running down the street, you know, naked, thinking they're in an orgy, or you know, skiing on the slopes out in the middle of the freeway.
I think that was one of the things her father was concerned about, the ethics of it.
Yeah.
Which is why he didn't actually patent it himself, was because he's saying there's too much risk of someone being forever lost.
That's
in their
right,
own head.
And I mean, you know, LSD is a really good example. People tripping on LSD and they get stuck in an environment. You know, I remember once up in Perth that I came across a guy who was in the middle of the very busy highway, and he was trying to get up the cat's eye, the reflector off the road. And I slowed down. I was like, are you all right? And, you know, because of busy traffic. And he's like, I've got to get this off the road. I'm trying to save it. So I'm saving this creature, he said to me. And I was just thinking, okay, well, do you want me to help you? Do I need to call anyone? And I mean, afterwards, I've always thought about that experience. Like he believed that cat's eye. I don't know if he thought it was a cat or something, but he was trying to get it off the highway. So he was off his chops and I'm probably on something like LSD. And it's like, this drug could be much stronger than that, you know. Like, you know, like what if you thought you were skiing down the slope, but you're actually, you know, out in the middle of the freeway, you know, or like the boyfriend did say, he didn't realise he could save himself, you know. So people could get probably locked into a coma or something.
Well, yeah, because if you've got all that choice and you're skiing and you think that you're going to crash. Yeah, because people have a lot of
crash,
locked up emotional things.
That's it. Yeah,
that they, you know, project everywhere. I mean,
that was definitely a question of science I didn't answer in the film. Like, what happens if you do that ski slope and you think you're going to crash, and then you crash, and you're dead in the, you know, like in the Matrix. If you die in the Matrix, you're dead. That was the rule. They clearly said it to us, didn't they? You know, so it was. You don't come back, you know. It's the same. Your mind can't deter. Well, they didn't dabble that in this film, did they?
Because you're going to get the problem of people going, I'm still in the memory. I'm still in that.
I'm still in that. Yeah.
No, you're not. You came out of it. No, I am.
No, I am. So what
the
is
only
this
way I can
place?
get is to jump off this building.
Yeah.
Because if I'm in my memory, I'll wake up.
I must not be in my memory. You know, this isn't real right now. This has to be. Yeah. So the technicalities of that science. But yeah, lots of connections to other good science fiction films. I said Total Recall and The Matrix, Gattaca. I really felt Gattaca at the start of this film and throughout a little bit. So the setting, really great. I thought, you know, we've talked about that, very futuristic. Perth.
The locations they chose. Because I was impressed. I thought, wow, Perth is really cool.
Yeah, it looks really cool in this.
Like, it's really nice.
Yeah. And I did see there's a little video of Ben C. Lucas saying that when they talked about making the film, that he wanted to shoot it in Perth. That's what he said. Like, he said, I want to shoot this. And a couple of people said to him, well, why not, you know, Sydney, Melbourne? He's like, no, Perth's a great location.
Because Melbourne would have been an obvious place with all of the warehouses to Collingwood and Richmond and things.
Yeah, but he deliberately, because he's based in Sydney now, and he's deliberately in this little video about it, did say he felt Perth was a great location for it. And again, as I said, I think they pulled it off.
Well, if Ben is listening to this podcast, then I reckon he should get in touch with us at
let us know.
SpaceBrainsPod on Twitter or spacebrains@gravityundone.net email address. And maybe we can answer a couple of these questions.
Yeah, let us know the truth behind those decisions. And yeah, I mean, he did, you said earlier, he did it was picked up. It was a private production company. They managed to get Screen Australia funding, Screen West funding. So they obviously, tapped into those markets. For him, this is his second feature, and his first was part of the West Coast Visions Screen West Fund, which is a low budget, $750,000 budget. Wasted on the Young.
Wasted on the Young.
Which is kind of a teenage drama. I've not seen it, but so it's not in the science fiction realm at all. But it received a lot of good critical acclaim. The great thing with this one, and I've seen a couple of, I think, the producers online verbally talking about this, is they sold it really quickly to Netflix, and it's got this worldwide distribution, and even when you look at it, like you look on IMDb and stuff, I saw there's people in Canada saying, watch this film, and there's people in the UK, there was someone in the UK, I saw a comment them saying, it's kind of like a long Black Mirror episode, like I love it. People need to be rating this.
It has that,
and that's a real compliment, I think, as well, so again, people out there, being that it got picked up by Netflix and they're promoting it on their services worldwide, so good for them. The camera was really nice. I thought it was sharp, clean, intriguing. It gave us a fair bit of movement as well, like when they walked into the office space with all the computers, they moved the camera smoothly through that scene, and she sat down. I don't know why she needed 4 computers at her desk, kind of idea, but I was thinking IT, sorry, straight away. Why do you need so many? But anyway.
I've only got 2 monitors. I need another.
But she seemed to be mainly working on that laptop, but I was like, oh, okay, but anyway. But it was a good little scene that was nice and busy in Hive, and I think they also were really smart in that, they shot her in front of that graffiti wall, that office space, that little Wolf Lane you're talking about, like it looked cool, shooting out of the tunnel, the way they shot from her apartment building where the city's blurry. They kept blurring the city in a really good way. Also, those night shots, it was clever. They shot at the top of a car park looking up, so the camera automatically is looking up into the sky, and you've got these great big, skyscrapers. But you're up high as well. So the camera's up high, but it's a low angle. So it's sort of like you're getting a bit of a strange version of the world in a way. So it's making it look a bit, the illusion of filmmaking is playing there. They did that really well. And he also played off, you mentioned Hitchcock. Well, pretty much what they call the vertigo effect was used a couple of times. Another way to call it is the dolly zoom. They call it vertigo because of Hitchcock's vertigo, which is that effect of the camera moves and it either zooms in, zooms out, and you get this real distortion, like the world is either closing in or...
Your field of view changes from wide to narrow.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
You often have like a person or a thing as a central focus, and then everything else as that weird stretching, warping effect.
If you Google it or YouTube it, there's some great examples. Vertigo, they do it in Vertigo when he's ascending the stairs, and he keeps looking over and the stairs get longer.
Yeah.
So it's a really clever effect. There's a great one from Goodfellas by Martin Scorsese that a lot of people talk about where they're in the cafe. So in this film, they use it when she goes to the hospital. And so every time she went to the hospital to see her brother, you had that long shot. And again, it was that distortion of the hospital corridor. So maybe entering the two worlds or something like that. It's nice and disorientated. They also disorientated us out of the tunnel. So they flipped the camera. It's really bizarre. So you don't get that in many films. So it's quite of like it's an upside down world, you know. Colour as well. Like Perth looked good, but also the colour grading of the film, to me, it matched some of those other science fiction films where it's a bit cold, it's a bit slick,
it's a bit grey, sort of blues and reds.
The blues, the greys, the reds, where it's much more clinical. Things look a bit more clinical, you know. Yeah. And then if you contrast that to maybe at the end of the film where she's a bit more free, she's back at the beach. It's actually then very colourful, you know. It's sort of the moment there's a bit of colour.
The interesting thing I found was that Perth and Mandurah are by and large very bright.
Yeah, they are. It's extremely bright.
My dad, he's from the east coast. Well, I am too, but he lives over on the central coast there. There's lots of big trees and cloud comes and goes and so forth. And he describes when he gets to Western Australia, gets off the aeroplane, it feels like as soon as he steps out of the airport, the sun is hitting him on the head and it doesn't stop until he gets back on the airplane and goes home. Because there's just no shade and everything's just bright yellow and white, and there's a lot of sandstone and beach colours and things everywhere. But to see in this movie here, as I said, it's been toned down, and and turned into this future look.
That's right, yeah. And so I think they did that well. The colour grading's really great in that way. And likewise with some of the, you said before, like Passengers, really slick and stuff. Yeah, big Hollywood production, I think we talked about 120 mil or whatever. This one, but the special effects, like Otherlife, the computer graphics, those brain scans, even the thing that which is not special effects, but it's a prop, she put the thing on top of her head. I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, all those computer graphics and the brain scans and stuff, to me, it was like, oh, this is futuristic. This is enough to kind of keep me hooked here. It looks real. We talked about last episode, the alien spaceship being a working factory kind of spaceship and how they set that up. I think they did that quite well here as well. So the office space, it looked entrepreneurial. It looked like a little company. And then when they had obviously become a big company, now they're in this big skyscraper, with all that sort of stuff that goes along with it. So yeah, I thought the special effects were quite good.
Very well chosen, I think. So in summary then, we have Otherlife by Ben C. Lucas, released 2017, starring Jessicadegouw. If she's listening to this podcast and would like to correct us on a pronunciation of her name,
maybe she can send us a little voice message of her.
Please do. We're always looking to try and improve our pronunciation of names because, trust me, I get my name mispronounced oddly a lot.
Yeah, and if you're listening, let us know about the movie, Otherlife. Let us know what you thought. Let us know what you thought about this episode and what you'd like us to focus on, or if there's anything you'd like us to add or not do in future episodes.
Yeah, and please do check out my book. We don't have any advertising. My exit plan does not run any advertising. I am staunchly refusing advertising, not that they're offering.
Stick it to the man.
But my thought is that given the opportunity, people will support what they like. So
They will.
Feel free to support by buying a copy of that book or just recommending it to someone else or doing whatever you want to do with it.
So our next episode, we are going to look at the movie. It's from my list, Spectral. Sorry.
I've seen this one before.
Oh, have you? Okay,
yes.
There you go. You've got advanced viewing on
I shan't give you any spoilers.
No, don't give me, because again, I just picked it off the list. Available on Netflix and other services probably. So, yeah, check it out before our next podcast gets out there.
Spectral.
If you have seen it, let us know what you think in advance.
I can't even remember what the description for it was. But, yeah. So I look forward to watching and recording another session of that.
Yeah, definitely. So thanks for listening.
And we'll speak with you later.
Yep, see ya.
Bye.